What's up? Welcome back to the Metalhead Car Show. So when new cars come out, there's always hype towards them, towards what they're going to be and how fast they're going to be and how reliable and new features. But every now and then, they come out disappointing. Whether they just didn't live up to the hype, or they just didn't deliver what was promised in the first place, or what came out wasn't what was rumored to come out, there's a lot of cars that have disappointed the consumers. So today we're going to go over 5 cars that did those things. Also, as you may have already gathered, we are playing around with the new filming setup, so if you like it, let me know. We're probably going to be changing some things in the future, probably the foreseeable future, but I want to know what you think. But for now, let's get right into it. Starting off with the Mark V Toyota Supra. Now, this thing had a little bit of a rough birth. Now, there's rumors of the Toyota Supra coming back into production that dated all the way back into 2006. And whilst all that was going on, Lexus brought out the brilliant LFA. Toyota had the GR1 prototype out that ended up using some Supra parts, and the BRZ was out. So we knew Toyota was working on cool things, and whilst all this was going on, the Toyota Supra was still kind of on the back burner until we got to about 2018. Now in 2018, we started seeing more prototype footage of the new Supra, and in 2019, we actually started to see the Toyota Supra on the road. And fans really weren't sold on it. Now the Mark IV Supra kind of went down as a legend at this point, between its good looks, its 90s aesthetics, and that brilliant 2JZ. Now, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with the looks of the Mark V Supra. In fact, I believe it actually takes a lot of nods from the Mark IV Supra, just modernized, but a lot of fans weren't happy with it because underneath all that Toyota skin, a lot of it was BMW. Now, this still made a great sports car, but the fact it had a BMW engine, a BMW transmission, a BMW infotainment system, and even a BMW shifter, fans weren't sold on it. And considering the fact that the Nissan GT-R is making over 550 horsepower, the NSX is making like 570 horsepower, so the fact that this came out at 335 horsepower was also a letdown. Now, Toyota upped the horsepower to like 380 horsepower, then people whined that it wasn't manual. Now, Toyota decided not to do a manual transmission due to the bulk of sales are automatic, but just for the fans, Toyota went and made an all-new manual transmission out of BMW parts, but a new transmission that was exclusively going to be for the Supra. And then fans still complained because it still was BMW powered, and we didn't have a factory target top. Now, there was a lot of rumors towards what was going to happen with the Supra in the future. We've done a lot of videos on it, but unfortunately the Supra is going to be killed off. It's a shame that it never got the popularity that it did, because it's generally a really cool car. But most likely, a year or two after it dies, it's going to get the love it truly deserves. Next up, I'm going back to the 1980s with Jaguar. Now, Jaguar was working on a brand new supercar, and they were actually taking a lot of requests for this supercar. It was a manual, all-wheel drive, naturally aspirated V12, top speed of 220 miles an hour, making the name XJ220. But this thing ran into some problems. By the time this actually came out, the V12 was scrapped for a twin-turbo V6, the all-wheel drive was scrapped for rear-wheel drive, and it didn't actually achieve 220 miles an hour, whilst having a very similar sticker price to the McLaren F1, which performed a lot better. So not just do buyers bail out of this, but people are actually trying to file lawsuits against Jaguars because they're trying to sell something that isn't what they offered. A lot of people put down payments on a certain car and then got something else. The lawsuits were dealt with, but Jaguar ended up selling a lot less than expected, even though they actually made a new version which exceeded the 220 mile per hour marker. It wasn't enough for the fans. So after the XJ220's death, these things plummeted in price. They were worth like 80 grand at one point, which didn't last long because, like any failed supercar, it got wildly expensive for no reason. The market noticed exactly how cool it was, and they skyrocketed the price. Sure, it wasn't all-wheel drive, but meant you could likely have a bit more fun with it. Sure, it wasn't a V12, but it was also insanely fast. And yeah, it didn't do 220 miles per hour, but when are those extra 3 miles per hour really gonna matter to you? The XJ20 was a super cool car. We all now know of it as a super cool car. It's just a shame it took over 10 years for everyone to figure that out. Next up, and going even more back in time to the 1970s. Now, the early 1970s, America was going through a fuel crisis where they just weren't getting enough fuel in to fill the needs of everybody, and the manufacturers tried to do everything in their power to kind of keep up with this. So in 1974, Ford was making a brand new Mustang, and prior to that, the Mustang's reputation was to be a badass muscle car. Sure, they called it a pony car back then, but it's 2024, pony car doesn't mean anything anymore. So the Mustang II came out in 1974 as the brand new fuel-efficient Mustang with a 84 horsepower four-cylinder or like a 89 horsepower V6. The enthusiasts were in love with it. Now, that didn't hurt sales. The 1974 Mustang was one of the best-selling years of the Mustang ever. But for the enthusiasts, the Mustang II had the reputation of being a slow economy turd. Now, Ford did answer this. They eventually put a 302 V8 into the Mustang II, so it was making about 130 horsepower. There was no variant of the Mustang II that was fast. Some looked cool, and I'll fight anyone on that, but none lived up to the heritage or the hopes that people had from previous Mustangs. Now, I've always felt putting some sort of variant of a 351 in the Mustang II would have been a great idea, but unfortunately that never happened. Today we're in this weird boat of Mustang IIs are now actually going up in value, but for a very long time they were completely worthless because they were just seen as this stain on the Mustang's history. Despite being a fairly smart move from Ford at the time, and despite selling very well, it goes down in history as one of the worst Mustangs ever made. Next up, and that is Di Tomaso. Now, Di Tomaso is primarily known for really three cars, and that is the Mangusta, arguably the Lancia, and the Pantera. Their thing is to make beautiful Italian sports cars powered by Ford small blocks. And for the most part, Di Tomaso did exactly that until their death in the mid-90s. But around 2009-2010, there were sightings of a new Pantera leaving what was known to be the Di Tomaso factory. We have actually talked about this Pantera in this video. Check it out if you haven't already. But what we knew was this would be a brand new mid-engine supercar, presumably with a Ford 4.6 or what was going to end up being the Ford 5-liter. And then, after the photos came out of it, and we saw that one video where it sounded fantastic, we never saw it again. But instead, we got this. This is a car that, at this point, nobody cares about. Nobody talked about it then, and the fact that Di Tomaso, having the history that it has, came out with this blob. If there was no sightings of a Pantera, maybe this could have passed, but since we saw the Pantera, and since we heard what was likely going to be a Pantera, and then the blob came out, it was disappointing. But I will say, Di Tomaso has kind of redeemed themselves with the two new cars they have out right now, because they look absolutely stunning and sound amazing. I can't wait to see one in person someday. And the last one we're going to talk about is the Tesla Cybertruck. Yes, YouTuber complains about Cybertruck. What's new? The Cybertruck was originally unveiled back in 2019, being this bulletproof EV pickup truck with an incredibly long range, outrageous horsepower, and being made of bare stainless steel just like a DeLorean. The goal of the Cybertruck was to challenge what a pickup truck needed to be in this day and age. If you don't need a big ass V8 in the front, why does it need to look just like that? And with that, mixed with some 1980s DeLorean influence, we got the Cybertruck. For everything I'm about to say about the Cybertruck, I do respect that thought process. I do respect the, why does this need to look like this? Why does this need to be this? I do respect that. But again, that was 2019. People have only really started taking delivery of their Cybertruck in early 2024, and as a Canadian, I have yet to actually see one on the road. But when the Cybertruck came out, it had, let's just say, some issues. It started off with the accelerator pedal trim breaking off and potentially being wedged into some carpet trim, which would put the truck into full acceleration. Now, you have a truck that weighs over 6,000 pounds and makes over 600 horsepower, that can be a problem. Now, there's been a number of cases of people scratching themselves on the front fender, the end of the bed, the door, and I think we even heard the floor right under where the door is. Matt Farah actually did a video on this a while ago where he's exploring all these sharp bits. I know Matt Farah is pretty anti-Tesla no matter what, but also I'll put it in the link below, go check it out. But adding to that, Tesla also put in a drive-by-wire steering, which isn't a bad method of doing it, but it caught a lot of people off guard. So there was a lot of people getting into accidents with these things very early on, which is not a Tesla problem. It is a operator problem. I'll acknowledge that. But when you also make over 600 horsepower and weigh a lot, it doesn't add up that well. On top of all the glaring issues it had on its release, it also did not come out at the price that Tesla promised. It didn't have the range they promised, but it was faster than they promised, so there's that. I think the Cybertruck is a very bold move. I'll never take that one away from Tesla. But what I will say is this should have been a prototype that never actually made production. And I didn't make this video purely to shit on the Cybertruck, I promise you that. But there's a reason it made the list. But with that, I want to know, what do you think? Do you agree with my list, and what cars do you think were huge disappointments when they first came out? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed what you've seen. I post on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I'll see you later.